Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Vital Wisdom with me, Dr. Eli Camp, and I have a special guest today, Erin Musgrave, who's going to tell us a little bit about her healing journey. And I think it's going to be just a great time. I just want to remind everybody what we're talking about here on Vital Wisdom is this paradigm of medicine in which believers, practitioners, followers of vitalism understand that the body is a self-healing organism. And this is in direct opposition to what allopathic mainstream practitioners and the medical paradigm would have us believe, that we need outside intervention to create a healthy body, which we know is true when we've been in an accident or when things are so far gone that we are in danger of dying. Death is imminent. And mainstream allopathic medicine has done a really good job developing ways to save people from imminent death. But when it comes to recognizing, restoring, educating, and managing a person's ability to restore health, restore the environment needed for the body to heal, and then to assist the body to heal, they're not very good at that because that's not their paradigm. So just want to remind everybody, if you give the body what it needs, take away what's poisoning it, stimulate and work with the body's innate healing ability, it is a foolproof, happens every time. The body will heal itself. So thank you for being here today, Erin. I'm so excited.
Thank you.
Later on in the show, I'm going to talk about some of the things that you sent me to try because, man, I think they're great. I think you're on to something.
Thank you.
Well, we'll talk about those in a little bit. So introduce yourself to my audience and tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll just get rocking and rolling here.
My name is Erin Musgrave. I am an herbalist. I'm not a master herbalist, but I attended a plant medicine school in Seattle, Washington called Adiantum School of Plant Medicine. It was a one-year program, plant identification, foraging, and pretty much we learned a lot about Chinese medicine and how to take these plants and use them for healing as medicine. And when that was in 2019, and I started an apothecary business, but I also do energy work as well, which is kind of sort of how my healing journey started. It was actually with energy work, and then that kind of got me into learning about holistic medicine and plant medicine, and it just kind of turned. I've run my business over social media for like the past 6 years on Instagram. When I was going to school in Seattle, it was really, really hard to survive. I've been in survival mode almost my entire life. That's a big part of my story. Like you're a survival mode. But I kind of forced myself to do the Instagram, social media, and putting my business on social media because COVID hit. And how was I supposed to survive without trying to promote my business on social media? To my surprise, my Instagram took off, and now I've got almost 30,000 followers, and I kind of unintentionally turned into a content creator, even though I didn't want to.
Right.
So that's kind of what I turned into.
Right.
But I used to dislike social media, but it was good for me. So I've been running my apothecary business, my energy healing business through social media the past few years. And I'm still on a healing journey. It's not quite a situation where the healing journey ended. It's taken me this far, and I'm still working on it.
I think that's true for everybody, Erin, right? People, it's kind of like when folks say, oh, I'm going to go on a diet and lose weight. And when they say something like that to me, what I hear is, I'm going to eat well for a period of time, and
Hmm.
then I can go back to what is normal. And I always tell people, so it's not a diet,
Hmm.
it's a change, it's a new way of living life forevermore, right? Because if you keep doing the same things you've always done, you're going to end up with the same results. And so it's
Right.
not a diet.
Well, you made a comment earlier that I think is really the whole truth of everything. You said you have to take out the toxins in your life, in your diet, in your environment, and it's when you take out the toxins that everything starts to change. And I think that was a concept that even when I first got into the energy healing, I still hadn't learned yet. It was like steps. And then after energy healing, it's like I got into herbalism. But then even after herbalism, all of a sudden I was like, there's still something missing. And that was where I got into nutrition, because in as a child growing up, like I was in elementary school in the 90s, and you remember we've got the food pyramid and the food chart. It's all lies.
All
and the,
lies.
and you know, having to relearn the way we think, and not just when it comes to natural medicine, but the toxins, that we're all just poisoning ourselves, and like we have to relearn the way that we think everything
Yeah.
and view everything.
Yeah. Well, it's what we're taught from a very young age when you're in the system.
Mm-hmm.
We're being primed to be consumers and a commodity, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned a few times your healing journey. Are you
Mm-hmm.
comfortable sharing with us
Oh
your
yeah.
healing journey? Tell us about what happened, what was going on, and what was the light? What was the light that you started to move towards? How did that happen? Like, tell us the story.
Okay. So this is a story, I've shared a lot on over the years with my Instagram, and I do think that it's a story that can really kind of inspire people and help people. I know that there's a lot of people out there that are in a similar situation that I am. And I think another thing that I like to really talk about is stuff that most people are too afraid to share or let people know, is the struggle, especially with, I've been, when I say survival mode, make crazy survival mode, not having money for food, housing, and everything, all because my life-threatening illnesses make it to where I can't afford to survive, and our system has it set up that way. But when I was a child at in developing autoimmune diseases, and so at the age of 11 years old, it started with Crohn's disease. And now as an adult, I know why I got the Crohn's disease. It was the food that I was eating. But never did I ever have a doctor, a gastroenterologist, or anybody say that there was anything wrong with the food I was eating. I went to all these doctors, colonoscopies, endoscopies, and never once did they ask me or ask my mother, like, what are you eating? And
Right.
so that's how, those issues started. Over the years, the Crohn's disease eased off, and I think kind of went into remission because my mother started changing the way she cooked. But what happened was then we went to, when I was 18, Graves' disease, and they could not get my thyroid regulated. I didn't know anything about, natural healing at that point. I'm just a teenager. So they took my thyroid out. They had tried, the radiation treatment, all sorts of medications. It didn't work. So they took my thyroid out when I was 19. But within 6 months of getting diagnosed with Graves' disease, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And I personally, just from a lot of things I've learned, especially over the past few years when it comes to type 1 diabetes, um, there are a lot of doctors nowadays that kind of link the failure of the pancreas to food poisoning and stomach bugs. And I had eaten out at a restaurant when I was 17, and everybody that went with me, we all got food poisoning, and I got it really bad. And then within a few months of getting the food poisoning, I started having strange symptoms, extremely thirsty, just drinking, liquids all the time. But I wasn't thirsty for water. I wanted sugary drinks, and I don't really quite know why that is, but it was like you just crave like sugary drinks. And I started getting foot cramps and all that sort of stuff. And my mom finally took me to the doctor. I had type 1 diabetes. And so that has always, especially as a teenager, being told that you've all of a sudden got to take shots and check your blood sugar. Oh, I didn't want to do any of that. But then within a few years, I was 18 when I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. But what is really the big one that caused me, that really affected me was at the age of 21 years old, I had a very, very traumatic event that happened to me, emotionally traumatic. And it was something that I'm not going to say what happened to me, but something very, very emotionally traumatic happened to me. Something that really kind of like shocked me. And I woke up, I managed to fall asleep that night, and I woke up the next day, and my legs from like my hips all the way down to my feet were in excruciating pain, just inflamed, painful, and even swollen. And I started going to doctors, asking them what was wrong. Eventually, they diagnosed me with fibromyalgia and undifferentiated connective tissue disease. But what was a little bit different is, the pain levels can be really severe for some women with fibromyalgia, and some people, the pain is mild. But for me, the pain was just excruciating. I'd say on a level from 1 to 10, 10 being the worst. My pain levels averaged at about an 8. And I had sometimes that it was so excruciating that I would throw up just from not being able to handle the pain. And, the doctors, at the time I lived in North Carolina and went to Duke University Medical Center. And I had been going to tons and tons and tons of doctors. And see, that was the whole thing. That was it. We start with this doctor, and they don't, all they can do is just write you prescriptions in hopes that it can help, but never do they say, yes, this will cure you, or this will heal you. And so I did what everybody does, and I bounced from doctor to doctor to doctor, because that one couldn't help me. That one didn't help me. And so I just continued it. But I was practically bedridden for over 7 years. I could get up out of bed to go to the bathroom or to get myself some food out of the refrigerator, but I was in bed on average 16 to 18 hours a day, and I couldn't sleep. The pain was so extreme. But at the same time, I think they probably had me on at least 6 different prescription pain medication. And even though I couldn't sleep, it gives you horrible side effects, horrible chronic fatigue. You're just so weighed down. I couldn't get out of bed. And so I had absolutely no life. And all I ever did was just try to find another doctor. And so what happened was the kind of like the light bulb that went off, the epiphany. I was not raised, even though I grew up in the Bible Belt, I was not raised a religious person. I was never even knew anything about spirituality. But this is, I guess you could say, a moment. The things that happened kind of let me become a spiritual person. I finally I got an appointment with a really great doctor at Duke Medical Center, and a rheumatologist. And I had been almost bedridden for over 7 years. And I go to see this doctor, and she was very, very nice. And I I was just so desperate for help, like everybody is. She's probably like the 10th doctor that I've seen. And she could really hear the, like the desperateness in my voice. And I just said, I'm so sick. I said, I'm in so much pain. I said, I've been to all these different doctors, and they said they give me all these medications, and they said they don't work. And so she looked at me. She was very kind. She was very nice. But she was the first doctor that had ever been to that was actually honest and said, Erin, most of my patients that are in your shoes just end up giving up, because she says, honestly, she says, there's nothing really that we can do to cure your issues or heal your issues. She says the medications that you've been taking are the typical medications we give. She says they can only just kind of treat the symptoms, but she says it's not going to heal anything. And she says most people, she says, you're still young. And so she says, you've got that, you still got hope. But she says most of my patients, especially the older patients, just give up. And I don't know what it was about her telling me that and being so honest. You would think that it would have caused me to just get like super hopeless and depressed. But instead, it was like the total opposite happened. It was like this wave came over me, like the light bulb went off, and it said, okay, Erin, you finally had somebody tell you the truth about this. But instead of feeling hopeless, it was like I felt this kind of like surge of energy, a wave of fire that was said, okay, so now you can try something different. And I didn't know what that was going to be. I had no clue. All I knew was that I felt like this real sense of urgency, like, Erin, now you can try something else. And so this is where I think the story gets even a little bit more interesting. So I go home, and I've got this fire lit in me that, like, hey, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to try something new, not knowing what I was going to do. But I have a good friend that I was chatting with on the phone a few days after my appointment. And she was just telling me a random story about how she said, Erin, she says, I went and got my hair cut the other day. And she says, it was the strangest thing. She said, the woman that cut my hair says that she's a psychic medium. And while she was cutting my hair, she was just about my family and my life and friends. And she says, it was the weirdest thing. She was actually like right about everything. And so I'd never known anything really about psychic mediums. And I don't even know if I believed in them. And to hear my friend talking about a psychic medium was kind of odd too. But it's like I kind of took note of it. And I thought to myself, because she thought, well, maybe we should get a psychic reading. And I was like, well, that might be fun. But what happened was, it was just like talking about synchronicity. A couple days later, I received a phone call from my mother. My mother and I have never had a close relationship. I haven't spoken to her in years. At that particular time, I rarely ever spoke to my mom. She only called me if she needed something. But I get this random phone call from my mother. My mother also not a spiritual person, not religious, more of a agnostic. And she calls me and she's like, Erin, are you busy? And I said, no. And because I was waiting for her to see what she wanted. But she said, I just wanted to call you to tell you this story about a friend of mine that got a psychic reading from somebody the other day. And she says, it was just wild. And I thought I'd share the story. So she's sharing this story. about her friend that gets a psychic reading from this guy, and that he knew everything about her and gave her all sorts of information. And finally, I thought it was cool, but I'd never heard of my mom talk about stuff like this before. And I said, what's the point of all this? I said, why do you want me to know about, this guy? And his name is Justin Schmoyer. And she says, I thought that maybe if you got a reading from him, that maybe he could help you with your health problems. And so here I am thinking about it, because when growing up, when we see movies about psychic readings, we see like the crystal ball and the tarot cards, and it's like, they tell you you're going to be rich or get married and have 3 children. And those aren't things that I need to know. You never really see people in the movies like asking questions about the present moment, like, how can I get better? Can I heal myself, or this or that? So I thought about it. I was nervous about it at first, but I got on the guy's website and I booked a reading with him. And so they're over the phone, an hour-long reading. And so Justin calls me on the phone. I'm super nervous, and he starts talking to me, and I haven't given him any information. My Facebook was private, and at the time I didn't even have an Instagram account. So he can't find anything out about me. But he just starts talking, and he says, Erin, he says, your legs hurt. He says, your muscles, he says, your muscles, your body hurts. And he said, I just see you getting in and out of bed. And he says, that's what I just see, is like, I can see you getting in and out of bed. And I told him, I said, yeah, I said, that's why I'm calling you, Justin. I said, I've been sick. I've been bedridden for so many years. And I just wanted to see if, my spirit guides could like tell me anything about, healing myself. And so he said to me, he's like, he says, I see you getting better. And he said, but this is where, when it comes to psychic readings, one thing I learned, you got to write everything down. They don't so I writing down all the information that he's giving me. And I pretty much told him that I was needing help with my illness, and told him I had been bedridden for many years. And he starts telling me that he very clearly sees me, healing myself. And he said, I see a lot of healing energy come your way. And so I'm writing these things down. But then he says to me, he says, I see you getting into healing crystals and like learning about healing crystals and their benefits. But he says, have you ever heard of a place called St. Charles? And he says, and I said, no. And he says, well, me neither. But he says, I see you going there, and it's going to change your life. And so, so basically it's like, I get this reading from him. He gives me all sorts of information. I just write everything down. When we're done with the reading, it's not like I had anything that I could just go do something right away. It was more of like I had to be patient and wait for things to come together. But I did, after the reading, I did start getting into like healing crystals and learning about them. This was over 11 years ago. And I was on Facebook, and I just typed in healing crystals. And literally, as the businesses started popping up, like third from the top, it said Crystal Ranch Reiki Healing School, St. Charles, Illinois. And St. Charles is the place where he told me that he saw, he says, I see you going there, and it's going to change your life. And so I got on the woman's website. It was a Reiki healing school. I knew about Reiki, but super skeptical about it. I just don't believe things right off the bat. I have to, kind of think about it, research it. But at this point in time, I just felt intuitively that this was really important for me to look into. I contacted the woman, and she just so happened to be teaching a level 1 Reiki class the following month. And so I actually drove all the way up to St. Charles, Illinois. I took her Reiki class, and I had booked a hotel. I took the Reiki class. I went back to my hotel, and I just immediately started putting my hands on my legs and doing the Reiki on myself. And that was the experience. The experience I had when I did that was quite magical, because what it felt like is that I always had so much pressure in my skin, in the muscles, a lot of burning sensations. What it felt like when I started doing the Reiki was like as if you took little needles and poked little holes in the skin, and you could feel it all escaping, just all the pressure and everything. It literally felt like it was escaping out of my legs and my skin. And I did Reiki on my legs and my whole body for like a good hour. And what it felt like is like if you imagine like an onion and you've got all the different layers, it felt like I just pulled a layer off. And when you are in as severe pain as I was, even just 5% decrease in pain, you can feel it.
Oh, sure.
And
Sure.
that's what it felt like, was like I took one thin little layer off. And then what I did is, I went back home. I did myself twice a day for about 45 minutes to an hour. And every single day, I just pulled another layer off and another layer off, to where within 30 days of starting the Reiki treatments, I was off every single prescription medication, even the pain medication. They had me on all sorts of medication. And I am intelligent enough to know how to wean myself off. I didn't just, I was very careful with it. But within 30 days, I was able to get off all the medications. My pain levels had eased enough to where I didn't need the pain medication anymore. And so I would say the energy work decreased my pain about 60%. And, even still to this day, 10 years later, I still have a lot of inflammation. I have a lot of swelling. I can't exercise like normal people can and that sort of thing, but I'm no longer in excruciating pain. I no longer, I'm in bed all day long. And so that's how, I got started with the energy work. It started with a psychic reading. And it was like, and that was what kind of just opened me up, I guess, like spiritually. And then I just over time, I was on disability also most of my life. I was on disability, and that's where I think, when we talk about, when I say I've been in survival mode for all these years, my health issues make it very difficult for me to be able to work. That's one reason I started my own business, was so being able to work for myself, work from home, and make my products and do, my social media is something that I can handle. But also when we talk about health insurance, and oh boy, I have spent the past 10 years learning how the system works. And pretty much, especially it's the type 1 diabetes. It's a life-threatening illness. I will die without the medication. There's no cure. And so what the pharmaceutical companies, and in my opinion, I think the government, because a lot of people, when I say the government profits off my illness, they try to say, no, it's the pharmaceuticals. They go hand in hand. Personally, I believe that the government has contracts with the pharmaceutical companies and all these other industries.
It is.
And
they're all in cahoots, Erin.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so what they, I think it was a little over 10 years ago, the pharmaceutical companies took any type of medication that's used for life-threatening illnesses and like uh, quadruple, if not even more, the cost.
In the
And
US.
in
Well,
the
this is
US,
right because in
absolutely.
other countries,
Right,
life-saving medication, if you don't that you don't pay or you
right.
pay peanuts.
Right. That's part of the whole thing over the past 10 years. I've had multiple times where I crossed over the border to Mexico, just walked across the border to the pharmacy to get my prescriptions and came back because I can't afford them. My insulin altogether monthly cost is about $900 for the insulin. Um, and then a few years ago, because I struggle, I cannot feel when my blood sugar gets low. So a few years ago, I started developing hypoglycemic seizures. And so the Dexcom sensors that are the only thing that will prevent me from having the seizures are wearing Dexcom sensors. Have these really violent seizures. I've had really severe concussions. And the Dexcom sensors cost over $500 a month. So then you add that to my insulin, which costs $900 a month, plus all the other diabetic supplies. Having the doctors require you to see them every 3 months to be able to get a prescription. And so the thing survival mode all these years, people just think, get yourself, a full-time corporate job. But not even that works. I'm not even physically able to do that right now. But the thing is even if I were, corporate jobs, your insurance doesn't just cover all your medical supplies,
No.
especially not type 1 diabetic supplies. I have friends in California that have corporate jobs that are type 1 diabetic. And my one friend says, Erin, there's a lot of my diabetic supplies that I cannot even get because my insurance won't cover it.
I know it is a problem, and I have a call coming up later this year where I'm talking to some insurance people, like bigwigs, because people die because their claims get
Mm-hmm.
denied, right? I mean, it's crazy. Okay, so let's fast forward a little bit to
Mm-hmm.
herbal school so we don't run out of time, because I definitely want to tell people about the stuff of yours I tried. You formed a company called Modern Day Oracle. Was this
Mm-hmm.
before herbal school or after?
I gave it that name before when I started my energy healing.
Okay, so you created Modern Day Oracle. Tell us a little bit about Modern Day Oracle.
The reason I decided to name it Modern Day Oracle was actually because there was one particular time before I started my business where a woman, when I started getting into the spirituality and stuff, a woman had given me a psychic reading, and she says, your spirit guides say that you're a modern day oracle. And I thought it was kind of a cute phrase to call me. But the thing about it is, like, originally an oracle, a lot of people think of oracle as somebody with more like psychic gifts and
Right.
psychic abilities, but originally oracles were healers that
Yes.
people went to get healed. A lot of times they would give the oracles psychedelics and then they would start,
Right.
right, you know what I mean? But
Yeah, yeah.
originally they were healers. And
Right.
so I just called my business that because that's what I started off with, was doing energy work.
I
And
love that.
I kept the name even with my apothecary business.
Well, I love it. I think it's a great name because we need modern day oracles.
Oh, I
We
think so
need that,
too.
right? We need them right now, simply because of the indoctrination that's happening. We
Hmm.
need people who are, well, yin and yang, right? The balance, dark, black and white, night and day. We have to pull people away from being so polarized into mainstream and allopathy. And I know insulin keeps you alive. I'm not saying that everything mainstream medicine is bad. I'm not. There are very valuable things, but I think what we have to understand, and it seems like you broke this code, but what we have to understand is that there are things that the body cannot heal on its own. And most of the things the body can heal on its own. If we are self-healing, it's just that there are things that happen we can't recover from, right? We can't regrow a limb that we've lost. If you're in an accident and your carotid artery is severed, your body can't heal that in time before you die. Like, there are a lot of things, but what we have to, I think, sort of get through the weeds of is, when do we need to turn towards allopathy and mainstream medicine? When is it appropriate for that? And when do we need to work with people, yourself, me, and hundreds of thousands of holistic practitioners and healers and doctors? When do we need to work with them to understand how to reestablish health and how to stay healthy, so that we don't end up at the end game of, I'm going to die if I don't have my leg amputated, or, right? Like, okay, so modern day, let me tell everybody, Erin sent me 4 things. And these are in really cool little tins, and I'm just going to read them to you because you can't really read them. It's all backwards. Oh no, look, it flips it around. This is called Muscle Melt, and it's good for muscle and joint pain. Now, you all know I'm a naturopath and I have homeopathy and I use herbs and stuff like that. But I always love trying products, because in this nice little tin right here is some of the best muscle and joint pain relief that I found. And it's got all kinds of good stuff in it. Marjoram and peppermint, white willow bark, arnica. Is that arnica the herb or arnica the homeopathic, Erin?
The herb.
Okay. Lots of other stuff in here. It's really good. And it's almost instantaneous. You know how sometimes when you're using herbal products and natural products, it takes a minute, right, for things to build up, except for homeopathy, which can be instantaneous. But this was really good. And I'm on a farm. I'm on a working homestead teaching farm and ranch. And so people work hard here, and their muscles get sore and their joints get sore. So I've shared this with a number of people who have come through, my workers and volunteers. The second one she sent me was Positive Thoughts, which is an anti-anxiety salve. And let me tell you, it has got some fabulous herbs in it: Tulsi, lemon balm, lavender, passion flower, some other stuff. And there's this gal who comes here to volunteer, and she's a hard worker. She does a great job, but her mental affect and outlook on life, she'll even say, I'm such a downer. Like, she just says, I know I'm a downer. And so I had her try some of this the other day, and by the time she left, she was like, can I have that little tin? My thoughts feel so much lighter than I have ever experienced in my life from this one little tin of stuff. So I told her that I let her use some more of it, and that I wanted to have this for the talk today, but that she could come by and she could pick it up. Okay, this one is really interesting. Adrenal support. So let me tell you, I just did a talk on adrenals for my Homestead Nature Cure group. So I have a 1-year program. I meet them every month, twice a month. I do a lecture, and then the next week we do Q&A. And this past month was adrenals, because the combination, at least in America, but in other sort of civilized, right, societies around the planet, is this busy, 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 really poor diet, lots of stress, sedentary lifestyle, and like, adrenals are getting taxed right and left and crazy. And what do they want to do? Well, they really don't have a lot to do until you get diagnosed with Cushing's or Addison's, right, which are adrenal diseases. But what about the dysfunction that can start years and years and years before? You know this. clearly in your story, right? So this is a nice little adrenal support, and I haven't had a chance to use it with anyone, but I have no doubt. I mean, so given what I've seen with the other stuff, that this is going to be really good. And I did use Dream Cream. I use this myself. So it's other people use the stuff you sent me, but I use this one and I'll tell you why. So I have very vivid dreams and I remember them and I write them down. And more than half of the time, at some point, I find myself in a situation where I dreamed about it. It could be a few days, it could be a few months, it's even been a few years. Like when we first drove down the road that leads up to our property, I had a dream about the tree tunnel, and it wasn't just a tree tunnel, it was this tree tunnel when I was very young. And I knew I was coming home in my dream when I was very young. And I forgot about it over 40 years until we drove through it on our way to this property. And that dream came slamming back into my consciousness. And I was like, oh, this is it. This was my dream when I was a kid. And so many things since then have happened. But in my journey of becoming Cherokee, I'm rediscovering what it means to be Cherokee, because I wasn't raised Cherokee, but I am Cherokee. I have come across a number of elders who have said to me, I think you are a dreamer. You're a dream walker, or there's a word for it. I'm translating it into English. You walk in the dreams and you receive something from the ancestors and from, however people believe, right? If you believe that there's a creative force, deity, plan, goddess, I don't care what it is, something greater than ourselves. And they tell me you're receiving information. I don't know what to do with it. I never know what to do with it. It's not premonitions. It's not like, oh my God, there's a plane that's going to crash, or, something that's going to happen. It's just, I see things in my dreams that I then see in real world. So I said to myself, because on here is Dream Cream, Dream Enhancer, and Sleep Aid. And I thought, well, I don't really need help sleeping because, man, I work hard and this farm girl hits the sack and I go to sleep. But I was very interested in the Dream Enhancer part. I use this and had some of the most, not disturbing, but more coherent. Like, how dreams can be very disconnected and you see blips and pieces and you kind of jump around. This was more coherent. It was like reading a story. And I really, really like, so this, no to my patients who say, oh, can I have that after the show? No, I'm keeping this. If you want some, go buy some yourself. But I really like that Dream Cream.
You're right though. This particular, there's only two ingredients: it's mugwort and lavender, and I chose those two particular ingredients because you can't. There's different. The dreams sometimes, like for instance, a lot of people take what's it called? Is it blue lotus or purple lotus? It's a common one to take for dreams. But anytime I take any of that, the dreams are just really kind of wacky and crazy and don't make any sense. But with the mugwort and lavender, they're so clear.
They're coherent.
Vivid.
Yes. And I still woke rested. It wasn't like the dreams disturbed my sleep. So those are 4 of Erin's products I got to try, and it's a 4 out of 4. I'm really impressed with all of them, whether it was me trying it or giving it to someone who gave me good feedback. Thank you for developing those. And those are available, y'all, at moderndayoracle.com. So, all right, before we go, I'd like to do 2 things. Tell me a little bit about your experience in your herbal training program. And then I'd love if you'd leave our audience with just a personal message or something you'd like to say to them to have them go home with today.
When it comes to like my training at the plant medicine school that I went to, my teacher and the woman who runs the school, her name is Natalie Hammerquist. She is a best-selling author. She's written medicinal plants to the Pacific Northwest, edible plants to the Pacific Northwest, so you can look her up. She's a master herbalist. But basically, my school was a 1-year program where we go in, we learn about identification, how to identify the plants, foraging. But there was a lot of Chinese medicine that we, are involved in the schooling. And I think that was the biggest thing, was learning how to make medicine. But if I can say that one thing that is extremely unique about my salves, because I mostly focus on salves, just for kind of like legality reasons. There's actually a lot of stuff that I don't like to get into with the tinctures. Believe it or not, salves are considered a cosmetic product, which is
Yes.
different than something you ingest. But this, most of the time when herbalists make salves, they might use a technique where they put it in a mason jar with some olive oil and, put it in the window for like 6 weeks, or some people might use a crock pot. But my method is called alcohol intermediary oils. And so they're actually made with 190 proof Everclear, but the Everclear is evaporated out. And I think that that is the reason why they work almost instantly. And I appreciate it that you say that, because I think when people hear me say they work almost instantly, they think I'm just making it up. But
Right.
that's what I get from most people that take the product, especially the pain product. They work almost instantly.
They do.
It's because the alcohol makes them so extremely potent. And herbs, I think there's a lot of people that take herbal medicines think that they don't work. Is that they're just kind of like, I think they work. It's not that they don't. It's just a lot of times they're not potent enough.
I
And
agree.
in this particular case, the salves are potent, but not on a level to where they're going to make. They're still gentle, and my salves,
Right.
they don't make people sick.
Right.
And so that is kind of what my biggest thing. My teacher at my plant medicine school, she always laughs and say that I know how to make the salves better than she does, but I've just been doing it for so long, and it's just what I focus on. And I teach classes, online classes on how to do the process. So other people, well, I like to teach people how to do this themselves, because
Yes.
it's super easy. You don't even
Yes.
have to buy them from other people. You can make all your products yourself for your family and friends, and they work.
Yes. Well, I think you've come with a fine product, and I found in my life that when someone is actually walking their path and following their, I mean, I do believe we have a destiny. I believe that we decide what we're going to do in this life, and when we find that path of what we wanted to do in this life, things just come together. It doesn't matter. Like, it's going to happen, whether you want it to happen or not, right? It's like opening the floodgate and boom. What would you tell people sitting at home, especially people who are right in the middle of a journey like the one you described, where I would bet you felt really hopeless at times?
Um, from all the things that I have learned on my healing journey, um, to be quite honest, the biggest thing that, even though I started off with energy work and that kind of got things going, focus on your nutrition and what you're eating. Eliminate all the toxins and the poisons, eliminate the processed foods, and watch your life change. And it's like I'm an herbalist and an energy healer, but it's like, if I can say the biggest thing, if you're struggling, if you're sick, focus on your nutrition and eating healthy and eliminating the toxins. I mean, I know that's might seem like a strange thing to say, everybody, but
No, not at
if I
all.
can say anything to anybody that is struggling, focus on energy work, focus on holistic medicine, natural medicine. But really, biggest thing is, as you said, take the toxins out of your life. And I think the biggest way to do that is rethinking the way that you are supposed to eat. Is
Yes.
my biggest suggestion to everybody out there. It'll change your life.
Yes. Well, what a really great and powerful message, I think, to give to people. And I completely agree with you. We are what we eat. Everything we do every day is a step either towards more healthy or less healthy. Just remember one step every day, because this can be overwhelming, this journey, especially if you're lying in bed right now thinking, I don't have the energy to get up and go make myself a cup of tea, or you're in chronic pain, or whatever it is you're dealing with, your body can heal itself. It can. And everybody's journey is very unique, very, very unique, and very individualized. I have never given a patient, let me say that differently. I've never given two patients the same treatment plan. In my entire career, over 20 years, I've never given two people the same treatment plan. That should say something to you about how individualized our approach to restoring health and assisting the body in healing itself should be. Erin, thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you.
today.
Thanks for having me.
I just hope that your journey continues to be amazing and wonderful, and helping people and continuing on your own healing journey, because it sounds like you're still, like, you've come a really long way, but you still have a path to walk. And so I wish you peace and love and blessings on that journey. And y'all have a great week, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks. Thanks for joining me today. For those of you who have written and emailed and are interested in my books and other offerings, I wrote The Unvaccinated Child as a resource guide for parents and caregivers to navigate childhood illnesses in a natural and healthy way. And while the intended group was the unvaccinated, it turns out it's an important resource for the vaccinated kids as well, since vaccines do not necessarily prevent illness. Smoke Rings is another book I wrote, and that's to help smokers support their health, regardless if they plan to quit or not. So for people who smoke, love a smoker, used to smoke, continue to smoke, this book helps you be your healthiest version. And when I say it is judgment-free, it is absolutely judgment-free. You're free to make the choices you make. I'd just like you to find better health while you make those choices. My most recent book, Homeopathy, A Foundational Approach, is really great for someone, whether they're a complete beginner or they've already been practicing homeopathy. It starts at the beginning and it guides the readers through the basics and on into first aid and acute practice, so you can start using homeopathy right away. That's the most important thing to me, is to get folks using homeopathy in their everyday life. My workshops and courses can be found at either ecampnd.com or longshadowsranch.net. Have a great week. Again, thanks for joining me, and thanks for your support.